Right, so today I wanted to talk about an interesting article I seen out of Forbes, and it's the top richest women in the world 2021. And let's just go over them first, and then, well, it's important to go over them for what I want to bring up. But so we have Francois Bettencourt Myers and family. So um, she inherited her fortune from her mother, whose father founded cosmetic giants L'Oreal. So again, didn't earn the money, inherited it. Alec Walton, again, the daughter of Sam Walton, who was one of the Walmart founders. Mackenzie Scott, who was formerly Bezos, who obviously got it in a divorce. Julia Koch and family, widow of one of the Koch brothers. Miriam Adelson, obviously Sheldon Adelson's wife, I assume. Yeah. So again, didn't earn it legitimately. Jacqueline Mars, uh, who again the grandfather founded the Mars bars, M&Ms, and M's, and Skittles. I guess is what they owned. So again, inherited money again. Yang Huilian, um, her father founded a real estate company. Suzanne Clatton, um, her mother was married to Herbert Quandt, who founded BMW. So again, inheritance again. Um, Gina Reinhardt, father founded a big mining company in Australia. So again, another inheritance. Iris Fond Bona. Um, she is the widow of, again, so husband built a big mining company. So again, notice a pattern here of literally all of the top 10 richest women. And the pattern being is not one of them earned the money themselves, right? Not one of them. Now, I guess to be fair, if you want to argue that, again, some of them were, wives, or I guess their husbands earned the money. So if you want to argue that they played into it, you could argue. But the point still remains that not one of them earned their money themselves, right? So this is very important to understand for many reasons. I mean, number one, it's very funny that none of these people ever get ragged on for, oh, their money should be taxed, right? Because if you're looking at the concept of taxation, right, like the most, I mean, I think it's all immoral, but if you want to go down the list of most immoral, the least immoral, the most immoral form of taxation is direct money you earned. Going down the list, money that somebody else earned, again, even if it's your family, again, I still, like I say, I still think there shouldn't be any, right? None of it makes any sense because it's immoral, it's theft. But money that you earn directly being taken from you is a lot more immoral than money that your dad earned or your grandpa earned, right? So again, for all the socialist types, where are you to want to tax these people, right? It's not fair. Now again, they say, oh yeah, we want a inheritance tax, but they don't push it that hard, right? And not to mention too, um, why not a money you didn't earn tax, right? How does that make any sense, right? So again, that's just one of the kind of bit of a contradiction there. But the other thing too is that for all the people that complain about the wage gap, again, and not to mention too just general like sexism and stuff like that, like it has nothing to do with sexism, right? Like the this is one of the many myths and just flat out lies that society believes and that we're told is that, well, number one, that there's all this sexism that exists, which if you want to argue that, it's actually sexism that favors women, not the other way around. I mean, there's not one thing in society that is sexist, that is unfair, that benefits men. Like, not one thing, at least that I've heard. Maybe there is something that I'm unaware of, but there's plenty of things that are sexist that favor women. I mean, number one, You look at the family court system. Um, you look at diversity hiring. Again, just go down the list, right? Not to mention, too, if you look at government programs disproportionately fund women, even though the clear majority of taxes are paid by men, too. It's not funny. It's very weird, too, that there is a legitimate pay gap, right? In that men pay significantly more taxes than women, but women use significantly more, or women use up significantly more of said taxes, right? No one ever talks about that gap, even though it is a legitimate gap, not a completely made up one like the gender pay gap. But again, like, this is something that needs to be talked about more, I believe, because when it comes to like talking about these rich people just have no idea what they're talking about. They're so ignorant and naive and just stupid. They just have no idea what they're talking about, right? And the first and most obvious one being is when you hear this person's has $10 billion, or what they actually say is their net worth, right? Net worth of 10 billion or 100 billion or whatever the number is. The average person hears that and thinks that they have $10 billion or $100 billion sitting in a bank account, right? And a lot of people, like, if you're watching this, I sure hope you think that that's stupid, because it is. But again, I've literally heard people bring this up, right? They literally think that Bezos is 100 billion sitting in a bank account, that Musk is 100 billion sitting in a bank account. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. The reality of it is that the vast majority of billionaires' net worth is not in cash, and it's not in salary either. Because when you hear Bezos's net worth went up, whatever it is, 20, $30 billion last year, Elon Musk went up $50 billion last year, they didn't make that much in cash, right? Why their net worth went up so much is that they own a certain amount of shares in Tesla or Amazon, and Tesla went up. They went up from like 200 to like 800 last year. So again, obviously Elon Musk's net worth is going to go way up. Amazon like doubled, so obviously Bezos's net worth is going to go way up. And not to mention too, again, if you look at people like Trump or someone like that, their net worth is largely tied up in real estate, right? So again, they don't have massive amounts of money sitting in a bank account. And it would be the stupidest thing in the world. Like, I brought this up a lot before, and this is just proof that people are the average person is completely financially illiterate, and it's no surprise why people are having such a tough time getting by these days. Um, if you were a billionaire, it would be the stupidest thing you could possibly do to leave significant amounts of your money in a bank account, simply because inflation typically runs at what, 2-3% a year. This year it's been a lot more than that. So let's say you're Jeff Bezos and you're going to leave $1 billion in a bank account. Well, inflation probably knocked out 50 to upwards of $100 million in purchasing power of that money, right? So if you're Bezos or Musk, you literally pissed away $50 million at least by leaving your money in a bank account. And that's just $1 billion, let alone 10 billion or 100 billion. Now, again, they don't have nearly that much in cash. I'm just trying to make that for sake of argument, right? So to people who believe that, it just shows just how financially illiterate they are. And again, they always bring up, oh, you got to raise taxes on these people. Well, it wouldn't do anything, because Bezos and Musk, neither one of them takes a cash salary. Actually, I think one of them does, but it's very small. It's like $100,000 per year, right? These guys get paid typically in stock. And why is that? Is it lowers their tax burden, right? Because, and not to mention too, it's a way of increasing their pay, because cash is a depreciating asset, right? inflation, like inflation's running at 2-3% a year. At least that's what the government says. It's actually probably like double that, but that's what the government says. So again, if you're getting paid in cash, you're getting paid in an asset that's being depreciated by 2 or 3% a year. If you get paid in Amazon stock or um, Tesla stock, in the long run, that's going to appreciate, and sometimes it's going to appreciate very, very fast, right? So if you could get paid in an asset that's depreciating or an asset that's appreciating, nobody in the right mind would choose the asset that's depreciating, especially past the point of, okay, maybe you obviously need cash to pay your bills, but for anything beyond that, you would be stupid to not want to get paid in stock. And even then, too, the other thing when it comes to these guys, too, is that they can afford to pay accountants and tax lawyers and any form of expert under the sun to be like, this is the way you're going to pay the least amount of taxes, right? And this is just proof that raising taxes will not work, because the taxes are already high enough to the point to where they don't want to pay them. So if you want to get these guys to pay taxes, lower the taxes, not raise them. And people say, oh, well, you got to raise capital gains tax then. Okay, well, the problem with that is that if they're getting paid in stock, they don't have a capital gain. And not to mention, too, the long-term cap gains rate is lower than the short-term cap gains rate. So if they're going to raise capital gains, they probably wouldn't raise the long-term as much as the short-term. So there's always going to be ways around that. But again, getting back to the main point here, that the whole women thing, um, this is just like when people complain about sexism in society, this is just proof that the big reason why this quote unquote sexism exists, it's not sexism. It is ambition. It is testosterone. It is just sheer will. Because again, if you look at this, again, not one of the richest women in the world earned their money themselves. Not one of them. But if you look at the men, I believe all of them did. I mean, Musk, entrepreneur, Bezos, entrepreneur, Bill Gates, entrepreneur. Who else do we got? I mean, I'm guessing Oprah is probably not far out of this list. Maybe not, because the one's still 20 billion. But Oprah, I think, is one of the only, if not the only, woman billionaire that actually earned their money legitimately, right? Which is astounding, right? Is absolutely and utterly astounding. Now, this list, they do say that there is, how many do they say there is? Um, okay, so apparently there's 108, right? Apparently there's 108. But to be fair, how many is there total? 328 women made the Forbes billionaire list. So still less than a third of them, right? Still less than a third of them are self-made, and not one in the top 10, right? So this is the thing, that if you look at that these men are so successful, right? Like so successful and so good at what they do, that they can, like, I mean, what was Bezos forced to give up, like 30 or 40 billion of his net worth to his ex-wife, and yet he's still one of the top guys, right? So this is the reality behind these guys. Now, I mean, I think there's other things going on too. I think that a lot of these guys do shady stuff too. I'm not defending. I think they do shady stuff. I'm not defending everything they do. But the one thing that I am defending is that these guys got to where they were in large part due to hard work, right? In large part due to hard work. And here's the thing: when it comes to Amazon, they were losing money for like 20 years. Like, people don't seem to realize this. Like, how good at business do you have to be to lose money for like 20 or 30 years and still keep the business going? Like, that is insanely impressive. Like, insanely impressive. Like, the average person, they couldn't maintain losing money for a year or two, let alone 20 years or whatever it was with Bezos. Right? And again, like I say, I'm not a fan of these guys, right? I think that their politics are usually pretty stupid. They do some shady stuff. A lot of them push for censorship and big government. But I'm simply saying they got to where they were typically because of hard work, dedication, And a lot of times it's high IQ too. That's the other thing that people don't seem to people don't want to admit either. And the leftists don't want to admit it, not because it's not true. Again, they'll deny it ad nauseum, but it's obviously true. The data is very clear that, if you look at the IQ for millionaires and billionaires, it's like 130 on average. The average IQ of a homeless person is like 80. Average IQ is like 100, right? So again, it's very, very clear, right? Very, very clear. It's high IQ, high dedication, high time preference, right? Because the way you become very successful in life is by the ability to defer gratification to the largest degree, right? And this is basically the way to describe high IQ too, is that the people with the highest IQs are the people that can defer gratification the best, because the more you can defer gratification, the more successful you're going to be, because the more you can defer gratification, the more money you'll be able to save, therefore the more money you'll make, the more you'll be able to, put work into a business and not see results, but still keep going and not give up. That is that is what basically high IQ is, right? And like I say, the leftists will deny it, but the data is very clear, right? It's very clear. They'll say, oh, it's unreliable. Well, it doesn't matter, right? That the I guess the big reason too they criticize it too is they'll say it's not perfect, which is true, but it's the best predictor we have, in that a high IQ predicts life outcomes better than college degree, right? For example, if you took 1,000 people with 120 IQs and you took 1,000 people with 100 IQs but college degrees, the people with 120 IQs with no college degrees are going to be earning more money on average, right? Obviously there'll be exceptions, but on average, right? So this is what explains this stuff. And the reason I bring it up too is that for society to function to the highest degree, resources cannot be perfectly evenly distributed, right? And I'll give you an example of this, is that, let's say you take hockey, right? You take the NHL. Would the Edmonton Oilers be as well off or worse off if a rule was imposed saying, you know what, Connor McDavid, you're too good. We're imposing a rule. You're not allowed to hold the puck for any more than the average player, and you're not allowed to score any more than the average player. Obviously, the NHL and the Edmonton Oilers would be worse off because of it, right? So the same thing goes when you say, oh yeah, we got to tax away 90% of these billionaires' wealth. Like, no, we don't. If anything, we need to do the opposite. Now, again, like I say, these guys do some shady stuff. I'm not supportive of that, but as long as we had a legitimate free market, I don't care. Like, if someone has 100 billion, a trillion, I don't care, because if they earn that money legitimately, who cares how much money they have? Because for society to function, we need the most competent people to have the most resources, because they are the ones that are going to use it the most efficiently. If you took $1 billion of Elon Musk's money and divided it equally amongst 1,000 people, they're just going to go blow that money on booze and cigarette. Let's say you give it to poor people, right? You give it to poor people. They're going to go blow it on booze and cigarettes and all the stupid stuff they spend money on, and they're going to end up right back in the spot that they ended up in. Same thing goes for the lottery, right? The lottery is the perfect example of this, and the lottery is the perfect example is that we're never going to achieve equality. It's not possible, simply because some people are so good at what they do, i.e. Bezos, Musk, that they're always going to be way further ahead, i.e. Connor McDavid when it comes to hockey. And there's some people that just suck so bad that it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to be last, right? And if you look at the lottery, a third of people who win the lottery end up declaring bankruptcy, which means that they are so in debt that they can't afford to pay off their debt. So these people are so incompetent when it comes to money that they can win millions or tens of millions of dollars and they will still find a way to be in debt, right? Meaning there is literally nothing you can do to help these people. And not to mention, too, the majority of people still end up with a lower net worth um, down the road than when before they won it, right? So the majority of people who win the lottery, they would have been better off if they didn't win it. Meaning that there's nothing we can do to fix this quote unquote wealth gap. There is nothing we can do to fix this quote unquote gender pay gap. There's nothing that can be done, right? And like I said, when it comes to this, getting back to the main point, I'll kind of sum it up here. It really bothers me when people bring this stuff up because I guess it just really bothers me that people think that they are entitled to things that they didn't earn. Now, here's the thing: if you married a man and he dies or you divorce him, you probably should be entitled to something. But what should be done is everybody who gets married makes their own contract saying in an event of marriage, this is what percentage of which will go to who, so on and so forth. Right? All this stuff should be ahead of time, and the state shouldn't be involved. Right? If a woman signs something saying, "Yeah, we get divorced, you get nothing," right? That's what it is. If a woman if a man signs something saying, "Yeah, I'm going to give you half my wealth," and the woman just marries him just for his money and divorces him 6 months later, well, okay, no one forced him to sign it, right? So that's how things should go, right? So I have no problem with people inheriting money. I have no problem with people, their husbands died or whatever. The problem is people act like there's this massive amount of sexism and prejudice in society when if anything it's the other way around, right? So I just wanted to bring this up because all the people that think that, oh, the only reason women can't get ahead is because of sexism, it's like that's the furthest thing from the truth, right? And if that was the case, we would see the opposite of this, right? If that was the case, we'd see the opposite of this. And like I say, it just really astounded me that not one of the richest women in the world, at least of the top 10, earned the money themselves. Like, how do people not find that just absolutely and utterly astounding, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you could do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get. But like I say, check out those links and stay tuned for more.